Hello, you are listening to Resilience Radio. I'm Irvin Eisenberg, host of the show and owner of Resilience Occupational Therapy. As always, the opinions on this show are not necessarily shared by me. I like to feature a wide variety of different perspectives, and none of it is meant to be medically diagnostic or prescriptive. Just see what you can learn from it. I am on again with David Lobenstine. I hope I've said that correctly.
You got it.
And yeah, this is our third video. You're a massage therapist and an instructor of massage therapists with continued education. We've talked about you and your background in other videos. We've talked about breathing and awareness, and we've touched a little bit upon this topic that I want for this video, which is pain. Do you have any perspectives on pain? I know the two of us have chatted a little bit about it before, but
so many perspectives on pain. I don't even know where to begin because it is essentially the heart of the work that I do, right? Most of my clients come to see me because they are in pain of one kind or another. And most of the massage therapists who I work with are similarly in pain from being massage therapists of one kind or another. So I think one way to get into this massive topic is from my own experience as a massage therapist, which is that the vast majority of our training, albeit this was 20 years ago, but I got a really good massage education. It was almost entirely focused on pain as being this thing that exists in the body. And we are tight or tense in our musculature, right? And we have these knots that some people call trigger points. And so the best thing we can do as massage therapists is we can press really hard on those knots until they, quote unquote, release, and then the client feels better, right? Or if you take a more fascial approach, right, we have all of these layers of connective tissue in our body, kind of like saran wrap that wraps around the muscles and between the muscles and skin. And that stuff gets tight, and that's why we are in pain. And so as therapists, we manipulate the fascia, and then the client improves. And the longer I do this work and the more I try to educate myself about really exciting developments in the field of pain science, the more I am convinced that that is just a tiny fraction of the story. And actually, when I am working with my clients and helping to shift their pain, I am working on the client's physical body, the fascia and the muscles, but really what I am shifting is the functioning of their nervous system and also their own awareness of their bodies and their own relationship to pain. And that is what's actually making a difference.
Well, I would have to echo a lot of that. I've had various guests on the show talking about pain. I had a social worker on a few episodes back, and then we had Adrian Lowe, who does the pain neuroscience education modules. I don't know if you're familiar with him, and one of the things I have to be careful with how I say it to clients. I often say, yeah, the pain is all in your head. And I say that when I said, but that's where pain resides. The pain there can be problems in the body, true problems. You could have a thorn sticking in your shoulder, but the pain is not produced by the shoulder. Pain is produced by the brain's response to the messages coming to it. And so all pain is in your head, just like all things you see are in your head too. They're not.
Yep.
But what that means is it's the nervous system response to it, because we've all experienced being so fixated on an activity or so worried about something that we didn't notice that our head still hurt, or we got hurt while we were doing something and we got a bruise and we don't remember where it came from when there was an actual injury, but the brain didn't produce pain for it. So decoupling that and realizing that that is all about sort of complicated nervous system, and it's very individualized, because once you get into our gray matter and the white matter in our heads, it's a very malleable and very individual experience.
Yep, absolutely. And I think there are a couple of very different things that keep us from that more accurate understanding of the pain that we feel. And the first of those things is just that the old model of pain is so much simpler, right? It's like, it makes so much more sense that if our lower back hurts, it must be because there's a problem residing in our lower back, right? So it just makes some kind of intuitive sense that physical things, physical problems are always the result of pain, and therefore the solutions must be physical also. So it feels to me like just the sort of obviousness of that equation is the first problem that we have to run up against. And then the second problem is more complex, but I think is ultimately more devastating, right? Which is that for, I don't know, the last, I think 400 years, right? Since Descartes, authored, I suppose, this notion of mind-body dualism, right? And this idea that our brains are fundamentally different in their existence from our bodies, right? We have suffered from this ridiculous split. And I think the way that manifests itself today, more often than not, is this idea, as you just alluded to, that the idea that pain is in our head is somehow a problem,
Mhm.
right? Because it means, or at least how people interpret it to mean, is that you're crazy. If pain is just in your head, it means that you're dumb or wrong or you're making stuff up, right? And that, no, I promise you, there is actually a problem in my arm, in my leg, in my back, right? And so that's a lot to come up against, because people's sense of being discounted, right, by doctors, or people being told that, things are quote unquote just psychosomatic, right? Those are just devastating and really, I think, follow us around and cause so much angst and difficulty, right? So I think those two problems, the fact that, the physical explanation is so much simpler, and also this idea that pain being in our heads is like this terrible thing, right, really keeps us from seeing the reality of pain in all of its beautiful complexity.
Yeah, and I often add when I say all pain is in your head is all pain is real.
Yep,
So even
exactly.
so you
Exactly.
can experience real pain that is just as legitimate as being struck in the shoulder, that is internally fabricated by the brain and isn't coming from external stimulus, but internal stimulus
Yes.
can be just as objectively painful.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's exactly how we need to be rethinking our understanding of pain. Is we need to directly address this fear that so many of us have, right? Of being called crazy, or of being told that we're making something up, or being told that something is, the pain that we feel is just psychosomatic, right? So we need to directly address that by acknowledging the reality, just as you've said, that pain is in your head and pain is real.
I've got a client who is in his 60s and in his teens jumped off a springboard and landed on his back wrong. And then has a history of back pain from that, has a history of hernia surgeries unrelated to that piled on top of that, and has had back pain as their norm for 50 something years. And I was just talking to them today about, well, they were saying, commenting that it's really startling and interesting to expect to be in pain and then not be in pain, and then not feel pain.
Mm-hmm.
That
Mm-hmm.
it's that when you're that he's so guarded around his back and so protective that when something is going right, it's actually startling.
Yeah. 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 And I think more of us live in that mode than we necessarily realize, right? Like, obviously that is an extreme and sounds like a really brutal example, of that particular client. But I think oftentimes we have various versions of that, right? Because ultimately what that is just our sympathetic nervous system, right? Just our fight or flight component of our nervous system, who is constantly vigilant and constantly keeping watch for threats, right? And so if we have had an injury in the past, almost inevitably that portion of our nervous system, almost completely out of our physical or conscious control, is always watching to see and to anticipate what might hurt next. Right. And so what he's describing is like that brilliant way of having that anticipation of, yes, this is going to be painful. Yes, I'm going to guard my body because I don't want to feel pain. And then being surprised, startled, as you put it, when that actually doesn't happen. Right. And that just shows it's that vigilance, right, of the nervous system at work.
And I don't try to, we often talk about holding patterns and vigilance and scars, and I put them all in a similar category as these are functions that are really good that we have these processes. This is what
Exactly.
keeps us alive. These are things that keep us resilient and able to function in the world. And they build a pattern. And then because we're a moving organism in a changing environment, that pattern may no longer suit us. But we should
Exactly.
still respect the pattern
Yes.
and
Yes.
appreciate that we had that these, in some cases, someone, when I do scar work, I might be talking to someone about their scar, and they're kind of like, "Can you just beat up that scar and make it
Hmm.
work?" And I'm like, "You do realize this scar may have saved your life, right? That, like, if you couldn't scar after a surgery, you'd just bleed out.
Yep.
This
Yeah.
is
Guaranteed.
you
That's
would
right.
never heal. So the scar is important. That's a sign that our body can heal,
Yeah.
and that scar might not need to be that dense anymore."
Yep. Exactly. Exactly. And I think that's such a crucial component of what I hope is a growing new awareness about pain, which is that it is the thing that keeps us alive. Right. And I think we are, I think, bombarded, especially in the absurdity of the social media landscape by, I don't know about your feed, but like mine is full of all of this crap, that techniques that promise to free us from pain or to get rid of pain forever, or right, whether it's I don't know, usually obviously it's something that you have to buy, needless to say, right? But that I've never actually seen anyone get rid of pain permanently, but also B, we wouldn't want to, right? Because pain is an incredible warning system, right? It is the reason why, we don't, I don't know, have more terrible things happen to our bodies all the time, right? So pain is this incredible gift, right? I can't remember what the condition is, but there is one particular condition where people have a startlingly reduced capacity to feel pain, and almost invariably those people die, right? They don't Their life expectancy is dramatically shorter than the rest of us, and it's because they don't feel the infection that's growing in their toe until, right, they have to have their foot amputated, or right, they don't feel all of the things that are the warnings, the reasons why our pain system is so incredible. So I think that you're absolutely right. It's like we have to acknowledge and feel gratitude for our pain, which admittedly is sometimes a really hard task, right? But I think it's only then that we accept that it's this part of our body that is ceaselessly working to try to protect us. Only then can we acknowledge its benefit, and then we can start to cultivate a new relationship with it.
So I've had conversations about pain with various folks on the show, and you might be the first one who also comes from a manual therapy background and
Mm-hmm.
is putting your hands on the injured area and or the painful area and trying to see what you can do to help. Or one thing that I find interesting is that we're discovering that the fascial system, which we used to believe was like this plastic that you stretch into the position that you
Mm-hmm.
want, plastic, it has some plasticity to it, the fascial system, but it's actually 10 times more innervated with sensory nerves than muscles
Mm-hmm.
are. So to me, the fascial system is the sense organ of the muscles and of the bones and of a lot of our organs and such, that when we are working with fascia, we're working pretty directly with the nervous system. That's our handle to the nervous
Mm-hmm.
system. So how does that, and this sounds like the way you're nodding that this isn't new information to you, but how does that idea, or the ideas we've been discussing, how does that affect your manual therapy as a teacher and as a practitioner?
Yeah, I think when I first started reading about and learning about the relatively new field of pain science, right? I think most of the prominent work has been done in the last 20 or 30 years. I was incredibly disheartened, right? Because if the muscles and the fascia don't matter and it's all about the nervous system, right, then wow, this education I had just received was pretty useless, right? And so I thought at first, like, God, I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm just like doing, like, in the industry, what we call like fluff and buff work, right? Which is like you pour oil on someone and you rub them up real good and you make them feel happy for an hour, but you're not actually doing anything fundamental. So thankfully, that's entirely untrue. And as I read more and as I tried to integrate the principles of pain science into my work with clients, I realized that obviously we can't touch the nervous system, right? So just like you said, what we can touch, in this case, the skin, right? And then underneath the skin, the layers of fascia and the layers of muscle. That is our conduit to working with the nervous system. So to me, what I realize now is that the particular strokes that I am doing with a given client are less important than my intention with that client, or I should say, with my intention with each of those strokes. So ultimately, what this comes down to is throughout every session I'm doing, my intention with each stroke is basically just to create a connection with the client and with my hands to tell the client, you are safe. And that's pretty much it. Because I find that once the client is safe, once the client feels safe from deep inside their nervous system, right? That's when the protective impulse that is the root of so much pain, that's when it can start to dissipate. That's when the body can start to, quote unquote, release or relax or let go. That's when those knots that we always talk about can start to unwind, or whatever the hell it is that knots actually do or don't do, right? But my hands are the physical manifestation of talking to the nervous system and making the nervous system feel that it is safe and thus that the body is capable of change.
I like that. And it makes me think, not to get into human exceptionalism, but we are
Why not? Why not?
but we are social mammals. So we fall
Mm-hmm.
in this category of social mammals who are intended to get our feedback and interaction to others. We're fine-tuned
Mm-hmm.
to each other.
Yep.
And even people who are extremely introverted, being socially isolated, is like solitary confinement is one of the worst, more cruel and unusual things you can do to someone.
Yep. Yep.
There's sensory deprivation going on with that as well. Additionally, and this might strike some people who have challenges with evolutionary theory stuff the wrong way, but as arboreal mammals whose ancestors have been in trees, we are also fine-tuned to mirror neurons, seeing other people. And the way a monkey sees another one climb up the tree informs how it climbs up the tree. So we have particularly strong mirror neurons, which is why when your grandmother says, put a coat on, you're making me cold, she's not just being controlling, you're actually making her cold. I don't want to let Grandma off the hook entirely. She can look away. She doesn't have to look at you. But you are making Grandma cold when you don't put a coat on, because she can relate to imagine herself in your shoes, and she's actually having a physical sensation. But I was thinking about physical touch and our responsiveness to each other, that when you're talking about the intentionality, for a lot of people that might start to seem a bit woo. Like, it's a little bit out there. Some people love that, some people don't. But your intentionality, all these nonverbal cues, all these little impulses about how we are, we're fine. We're highly in tune with each other in that way on a unconscious level. So what we are, the
Absolutely.
information we're getting from each other is so that we don't know we're giving is so important. So
Absolutely.
having an intentionality where you're not going in and going, I gotta break up that muscle, but like, hey, could you melt trigger point, has a very different approach, because now you're not inducing more attention to it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I think it's a real difficulty in our, current moment, right? Whether politically because we're so polarized, or technologically because we're so screen oriented. But I think it's easy to forget how foundational it is to just exist in the same space as another person, and how much that can either help us heal, right? If that engagement with that other person is good, or how much it can destabilize us, right? If the engagement with that other person is, unsettling to our nervous system, right? So it feels to me like, just as you said, the things that we don't say, right, in any given interaction are just as important as the things that we do say, right? And our presence in being with another person is, either can be really awful or it can be a great gift, you know. And so I think, for me, my work with clients begins from, the very first time I talk with them on the phone, from the moment they walk into, my waiting room, right? That's where the session begins for me, because I am establishing this sense of safety and ease and calm. And I hope that when the client is ready, when their nervous system feels like they are safe, then the calm and ease and safety that I'm feeling in my own body, as you put it, will be mirrored a little bit in their own body. And so they will start to feel more calm and safety and ease.
Sounds great. It makes me want to go get a massage, which is not just
There we
a
go.
plug. Well, it's so great talking with you today.
Likewise.
Yeah, really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So this was the third and final, for now at least, episode with David. You're listening to Resilience Radio. If you want to check out the other episodes, I highly encourage you to check out the previous 2 episodes. I don't know how much context helps this episode put it into. That was bad wording. But in any case, the music was brought to you by Aaron Marcus with their tune Some Biological Process, and thank you for listening. Take care.